Hi there, my name is Nicole Meeuws and I've experienced a near-death experience. So my experience goes right back to 2015, where I had an incredible journey into the other realms. It started off one day when I was with my husband and I wasn't feeling very well, and I started to feel really unwell. At that time I was, 4 months pregnant. It was one of my last chances to have a child at 39. And I felt that I really wanted to, just bring this new beautiful life into this earth, and to suddenly realize that there was some serious issue going on, that I had to be rushed with my husband to the hospital. He realized that there was something really serious going on. And so in the hospital, they said that unfortunately the baby had died and that I needed to remove the baby. Of course it was, as life always is, it's devastating when you hear news like that. And I needed to immediately have an emergency operation. And lying on the bed, I had so many emotions. I was depressed. I was utterly broken and sad. As a woman who's pregnant and suddenly realizes she loses the child, it's devastating, especially if it's her first child. And at the same time, I was anxious. I felt very fearful. And as the doctor peered over to me and injected my arm with anesthesia, I just lay there wanting to just drift off slowly to sleep. And in that moment, suddenly I felt something happen. My heart started to elevate, my blood pressure spiked up. The doctors all looked around, looked at the machines, and they were all stressed. And when I saw that, I immediately got stressed, and I was like, and in that moment, instantaneously, I was sucked out of my body into a blue-white light. And there was no stopping it. I couldn't fight it. I just had to let go. It was so powerful. It overtook my being. And while I entered that blue-white light, I immediately felt this stillness, this peace. So I let myself drift through into this void of inexplicable blues and whites, luminous blues. I suddenly entered into this white illuminated room. And there in front of me stood 2 enormous marble thrones. And of course I was in awe. I stood there and I looked, and I was like, I wasn't fearful. I was like, what's going on? What's this? And on those thrones, there were these enormous beings with feathered hair, long, like a Native American, these beautiful feathered hair, in indigos, blues, purples, and whites. Every hair follicle was a feather. They were sitting with humanoid bodies and face, with fish-like tails. And they had a strange humanoid face. I remember they had indigo eyes, feathered hair, but a kind of a nose, a lion nose with whiskers coming out. That was one detail that I have to remind myself always to say. And that was really interesting. But they looked humanoid, but kind of like a mer being, but absolutely beautiful. And in that moment, of course, I was filled with peace, because they looked deep into my eyes and it was almost like a homecoming. I knew I'd come home. I knew they were telepathically telling me, you've come home, you are our tribe, you've come home to your soul tribe. And all the fear and the worry left me, and immediately I felt at home. It was like everything that ever happened before seemed more like the dream world. And suddenly where I was now seemed more like the real world, because it had so many more colors. It felt so much more real. When I say it felt so much more real, I mean the presence, the way you feel when you're there, the visual aspects of everything. It feels much more the way life should be, just simply beautiful, harmonious, extravagant. Nothing like this dreamlike state that we're here on this planet. I always think back to how ugly this earth is if you think only about the cities. You know, we're still so behind with technology, and we're still so behind with our hideous square-like structures. You know, when you enter realms, these realms, you see the most incredible architecture, and their thrones were unbelievable. I mean, we're talking enormous thrones made out of marble with twisted pieces on the sides. I remember seeing that. That was incredible. And so they told me a lot of information about who I was, and it all came back to me, of course. I think in that moment you get a lot of realization who you really are. And are you just like, oh my God, I've just been on a long, bad holiday and called life. And then you come back and you just think, okay, now I get it. Now I understand. And in that moment when they were telling me more things, they were telling me about how I wasn't supposed to bring in children into this world. My story, me, I'm talking about me. I wasn't supposed to do that. And all the peace came all over me when I knew that. I felt so much more peaceful, and the guilt left me, the tremendous guilt that I felt after losing the baby, that all vanished into a deep, peaceful and loving knowing that everything's going to be okay. And they were telling me more and more information, and as I was like just coming into the realization of, yeah, I was sucked back into that blue vortex. And I was sucked right back, and I was sucked right back into the bed, where I woke up next to this Viennese, very strange Austrian nurse. I remember grabbing her hand and going, oh wow, you've got to imagine where I've just been. I've just telling the story, and she just shook my hand off, saying, leave me alone. I mean, she was a nurse, which was also really strange. But I was very fortunate in that same moment. My husband was right next to me. And while he looked at me, I didn't realize that I was not even speaking English. I was speaking a fluent, I can only describe it as a high-pitched frequency dolphin whale-like sound. So it was the most beautiful language, my husband recalls, and I was speaking with him for at least, I think, about 10 minutes in this fluent, high-pitched, low-pitched, squealing sounds, high, low. I wouldn't even be able to imitate that now, because it's just, I don't know, it felt to me like an ancient language, like a language we've always spoken there in the real world. And in this dream world, we're here to be separated by cultures, by languages, by religions, by politics, by colors, by male or female. It is endless, the separation that exists in this earthly realm, because there is no separation. There is unity consciousness, and you just feel you're part of everything, and you're interconnected to everything and everyone there. But I will say this, there is some type of a hierarchy there. Even though we're part of it, we understand that we are at different frequency aspects of wisdom. So the reason why I call it frequency aspects of wisdom is that I believe that because we are electrical beings coming to this earth, we come in as a frequency, as a water frequency, and we're birthed into this plane through water, actually, from our mother's womb back into this physical, grounded, earthly realm. And over the years, as we grow up, our frequency gets distorted by programming, by guilt, shame, anger, regret, you name it. All the negative things that you can imagine, and all the positive things too. But they shape us and they mold us, and we begin to forget totally who we are. And by the time we're, I believe, around 8, 9, 10, we're just in this realm, walking around blinded. We're walking around like the three monkeys. We can't see anything, we can't hear anything, we can't see anything, and we've just lost our true ability to speak how we usually really speak on the other side. And so yeah, that was my incredible NDE experience. And I don't know quite what to make of it, only that when I came back, I was suddenly able to sense and experience energies from people. I would know everything about them without knowing them at all. I'd be walking through towns or cities, you know, going shopping, going about my day, and at the same time I could sense what they were going through, what they were experiencing. I could visually see it, I could feel it, and I was really, it took me aback. It was too much, it was too overwhelming, and I felt like I needed to retreat from the city because it just got too much. So that's something that happened to me. I started to become extremely psychic, and not just that, I started painting after my NDE. I'd never painted before in my life. In fact, I was pretty crap. But what I started to do without having any lessons after my ND, I just started to put paint on canvas, and I didn't care where it would go or what it would look like. And I just felt in the moment, and I asked God to stream through me this unity loving consciousness and to bring it out on canvas. And that's what I did, and I started painting, and I was quite surprised with the paintings that came out because they were so colourful and so joyful and exactly represented what I felt on the other side. So it really was something that shaped me and gave me a lot of inspiration after to change my life direction, to start painting, to start doing something with my hands, because I believe every single one of us on this earthly plane need to either work with our hands or our feet or whatever else you can use to create something beautiful with. We're here to do that. And so that's what I started to do. I started to write because I started to get the most incredible downloads once I was in the ocean. I started connecting much more with water because of these experiences I had on the other side with these fish-like beings and feeling I was in this fluid, watery place. I started connecting to the ocean to start swimming more, and I started listening much more to the ocean, and I started to experience the most incredible stories that started to download while I was in the ocean water in Greece. And every night I would come home and I would wildly write all these stories down in my book that's called Terra Infinita, Downloads from the Ether. And these stories were wild because I never even thought about stuff like that, but they were mainly downloaded through the frequency of water inside of me that kind of told me about, you know, our time now and the years ahead, the future years ahead, and how timelines and our frequency are intertwined and how they are extremely important right now. So that was a book that I wrote, and I think it really transformed my life after that. I stopped living for tomorrow or for yesterday. I stopped having regrets as much as I could, and I stopped fearing about the future, you know, the what ifs, because they haven't happened, because right now is the moment that's happening here. And I started realizing that right now is the most important moment, here and now. And so I started to create the positive vibes in the here and now. I started focusing on what am I going to do right now that's going to make someone else feel good, that's going to make me feel good, that's going to bring in some deeper awareness, bring in some clarity, some wisdom, some universal love. What can I do in this moment right now for myself and for others? It's intertwined. And I started living my life like that, really. I started really just bringing in that presentness, that sacredness of right now. And so what else can I tell you? I can tell you that I've had the most incredible supernatural experiences. I've seen orbs floating around a couple of meters in front of me. I've entered rooms where in the midst of winter, where there were no flowers at all around, I'd wake up in the morning and the entire room was filled with the most incredible scent of roses. And that for me was incredible because I've gone through a lot in my life. I've gone through chronic illness where I had to self-heal myself. But I know it wasn't obviously me doing it. I know it was the presence of universal loving Christ God helping me to heal my body and me connecting to that presence of trust and knowing that through time, through presence, through awareness and through choices, I will heal completely, and knowing that I would heal no matter what, that really kept me going to heal my chronic illness. And it took me years to do that, but I overcame that in the end. I'm very open to connecting with people in general, and connecting with people that are truly loving themselves and helping one another. I'm not interested anymore in the negative energies on this earthly plane. I know they're there, but I refuse to give that power. What I will give power is the unity of consciousness, of love within me and within you out there. I'll give you power every single moment. And I know that so many of us are awakening now in these beautiful times, and it's not going to be easy. We're going to be surrounded by a lot of chaos, a lot of earthquakes, a lot of other stuff that I'm not going to mention here, but we need to focus on our organic human selves and to stay grounded in nature. That's the most important thing, to stay grounded in nature and to connect with water and speak to it, because water listens, and water is the hard disk of the universe. The water is surrounding our realm, and it always has, and it's beneath our realm. We're like bubbles in an endless ocean of bubbles, and what you see above you are not stars, they're bubbles, endless bubbles within a vast ocean of consciousness. And I'm here to awaken everyone to understand and question what truly is the truth, and do research. That's really important, not just to listen and accept, but to do research, and to feel what feels right. Not everything that feels right you've researched. You have to trust with your inner knowing, because all of that knowing is inside us already. We just have to remember who we are. We have to remember that we're here to create heaven on earth. So thank you so much for listening to me and my story. If you want to get in touch with me, you can contact me on nicolemeeuws.com. If you need help with anything, I'm here to help you in whichever way I can. And I just wish you all the best. And thanks so much for listening to my story. Thank you very much.